So you can only become invisible when absolutely nobody is watching you?
TGIF, it's Mantz and Mitchell with Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell. A double shot of good conversation with great guests to jumpstart your weekend. Mantz and Mitchell, you're on the air.
Thank you, Eric Kramer. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy start to your weekend, the way we look at it. I'm Gary Mantz.
I'm Suzanne Mitchell.
Together, we are Mantz and Mitchell in your ears for the hour. Glad to have you with us. And, of course, glad to be working once again with bad boy Benny Mathers at the board. He's our producer. Benny, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, you two. And it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood.
And why is that?
Could you be mine? Won't you be mine?
All right.
That's
so
all
we
I
got
got.
the sillies today.
You started it.
Yeah,
you started it, Suzanne. Don't even.
I admit I'm having a silly day today.
All right.
So there we go. We're gonna have fun, and we're gonna have fun with our guests today too.
Yes, we are. As long as I keep you two off the comfortable couch.
Okay, Gary.
Today we're going to have some fun doing metaphysical Q&A, and in particular, when Garnet Schulhauser joins us, it means anything goes. I posted that we were coming up shortly. I put it on Facebook and said anything goes with Garnet, and I think that's something that ought to be trademarked, as a matter of fact, because Garnet's a gentleman who looks deeply into life. Maybe we don't discover the meaning in the sense that we get a final answer. I doubt that's coming along. But if you ask the right questions, you attain a depth of understanding. And I would say that, he's definitely somebody who would get the bends if he came up too fast from the depths to which he searches for meaning in life and for the higher potential of the human species. I think that's fair to say. I have his mad props here, Suzanne, if you'd like me to do the honors.
I would like you to do the honors today.
Then we'll get him on with us. Garnet Schulhauser is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Canada's beautiful Vancouver Island with his wife, Kathy. Many years ago, Garnet left his lucrative law practice after someone incredibly wise and immensely kind challenged him to consider a far richer way to live. In the process, one that asked much of the author, but returned vastly more. Garnet dug deep into his soul to discover the ineffable joy of spiritual enlightenment. That's a quote. The ineffable joy of spiritual enlightenment. He has not stopped writing and talking about it since. And so, do you know how many times we're talking here?
12.
12.
It's a dozen.
An even dozen. Garnet Schulhauser, welcome once again to Mantz and Mitchell.
Thanks for having me again. Glad to see you two. You're bright and chirpy for Friday morning.
We are. We don't know why, but it's also not morning here.
We've had
on the East Coast. It's 1 PM, so we've had a chance to wake up this morning, have our coffee, have our breakfast.
Well, that's it. I think it's the caffeine.
Oh, it's the caffeine.
You set me up, but with the IV drip on the caffeine each morning, and it helps. Garnet, we're delighted to have you back with us, and it's always fun because we have this free range discussion with you. Anything goes, as I like to say, and we just wind up, we're bounded only by the clock. So we can talk about anything that is up for you, anything that is especially significant to you, and we'll try to do likewise and keep this party going.
At the bottom of the hour, we will ask you to come back from the break and talk about your books and about your website and any connecting information that you can make with our listeners. You have been on a dozen times, so a lot of people know about your books and your encounter. My question is, since you have written several books on meeting up with a very wise person who changed your life, my first question is, are you still meeting up with him?
Yes, yeah, I do. I'm still in contact with Albert, my spirit guide. Not sort of on a daily basis, but we still are in contact. He still takes me on some amazing astral trips on the astral plane. So I'm compiling more information for my next book, but I won't spoil the secret by telling you what's going to be in it. But it will be coming out, and so I'm still in contact with him, and I'm really happy to. I know at some point in time when my physical body dies, I'll be able to spend all the time with him on the spirit side, assuming that he still likes me. I don't know.
Very good.
Maybe he keeps an appointment calendar. You can make
Yeah.
some time for each other.
It was an important question to start with because of where Gary wanted to take this interview, at least for part of the time. And that is we have a tendency to look at the micro, but you have, with Albert, looked at the big picture, at the macro. And Gary, you wanted to say, what does Earth look like from out there in outer space?
And the casual way for me to introduce that with you, Garnet, is simply to ask offhandedly, anything in the news catch your eye lately?
I'd rather stay away from that one, Gary.
And so would we.
Yeah, I should tell you a funny story. A couple shows ago, I can't remember when, and I was talking about Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth, and pollution and climate change and all that sort of thing. And I guess I said something wrong because I got a nasty email from one of your listeners saying I should stay the hell out of politics. So I'm going to do that.
Okay, and we can stay out of politics. I'm not interested in partisanship at all,
Okay.
but I am interested in the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, the world spirit. And as we sit here today on November 15, 2024, it seems to me, for reasons that I don't comprehend, and I'm hoping to gain some insights from you and from Albert by extension, Garnet, and that is there seems to be a movement among societies, and not just in the English-speaking world, a preference being expressed at the ballot box for a strongman form of government, for authoritarianism, I think on the assumption that it's going to enhance individual and collective security. Otherwise, I don't know why you would vote for that there, but authoritarianism is on the rise. There's no question about that. I just don't know why. Do you have any insights to offer? Any clues?
No, Albert doesn't really get into earthly politics very much. He just says, humans are humans, and we've had a history of throughout our history of authoritarian dictators. We've had democracies. He just says they come and go in cycles. It's just like how the humans interact with each other. Sometimes it's on a good plane, sometimes it's not. I keep on asking him, is there any hope for our humanity? I mean, are we doomed to destroy ourselves, or do we have hope for the future? And he gives us a sort of a guarded optimism. He says, he feels strongly that we will pull through all of the problems. I mean, when you look at the news in the world, you've got the war in Gaza, you've got the war in Ukraine. There's all kinds of bad stuff happening now. It's happened before. He says we'll pull through it, but he won't give me any specific predictions about it. I don't know whether he can see the future or not. Whenever I ask him about the future, he just says, well, it's like Yogi Berra said, the future ain't what it used to be. So he's very guarded about that. His point is, he says, look, if I say to you, humanity is doomed, you guys have no hope, you're all going to go down the tube, then everyone who's trying to make the world a better place will just give up. And by the same token, if he says, yeah, no problem, you guys, you got it made, you're gonna pull through, no problem, then the people who are working hard to achieve that will say, well, okay, I can relax now because it's going to happen. So he's very guarded about what he says about the future. He just says he's optimistic that we can do it, but we have a lot of work to do, and we have to really work hard. And it all has to start sort of one person at a time. Like, spread your love to whoever you're living with, your neighbors, your co-workers, and then hopefully that'll have a ripple effect around the world. And so he basically says, don't despair about what's going on. We've been through worse times before, and we'll pull through this one.
I like that you said that, Garnet, because we were talking with an astrologer friend of ours a week or two ago. I think it was last week. And she was talking about the age of Aquarius now being upon us. We remember Godspell and the
Hair.
the 60s and hair and all of that, talking about the age of Aquarius. And apparently that will happen astronomically around the 19th of November. And she said it's a gradual movement. It's not like a light switch that goes on and off. It's like a light switch that has a dimmer switch on it. So it's a gradual movement. It portends things where people are more concerned about other people, because we're coming out of a time that had to do with the breaking down of our systems. And now it's coming in more to a time of people understanding their own power, people understanding their own purpose. And so I think that's kind of a nice blend with what it is that you're saying, that even though there is no black and white, in these shades of gray, we can be optimistic about the future and about our future as humanity continuing to go forward. And I like that thought, that things come in waves and cycles. And it's not necessarily circular as much as it is spiral. So we hope as we're coming around, we're actually better than where we were in the last place on this spiral. And I'm wondering if you get that impression from Albert as well.
Yeah, I think that's right, Suzanne. I think you are right. It's sort of like it's the old spiral, but you don't come back totally to where you were. You keep on
Yes.
moving up a bit, but it's a slow
Yes.
progress. I mean,
Yeah.
when we think times are bad now, but I mean, you look back over history, if you were living through the Black Plague in the Middle Ages, that would have been pretty awful. Living through World War II, say if you're someplace in Europe where the conflict was going on, that was pretty awful. I mean, the people right now, we don't really feel the effect of what's going on in Gaza and Lebanon or Ukraine, but those people certainly do. But the sun will get up in the east tomorrow again, as it always does. And I think there's good optimism for us to carry on as a humanity. But you never know. There's no guarantees. I mean, our planet has had a number of very highly developed civilizations that have crashed and burned, like Lemuria, Atlantis, and even some before that. So we're sort of at the same stage. And what we really have to do is make sure that our emotional and spiritual intelligence keeps up with our technology. We have lots of technology. We could destroy everything on this planet if it was unleashed. We just have to hope that that doesn't happen, and that people can sort of raise their vibrations up to a point where we can all love each other. That's where we need to go. We seem to be a long ways from that, but I think we have to keep our optimism in place and try hard. And as I said, we have to sort of work at it one person at a time, one day at a time, and hopefully the ripple effect will spread out. And we're a lot better in some ways than we were 20 or 30 years ago in terms of spiritual awareness, because 30 years ago, I'm not sure when you guys started your show. It was 1907. Or sorry, yeah, 1907.
Man,
1997 or
covering that World War I was a real bear, let me tell you.
I mean, you don't
That's
look that
good.
old, but
We're
say
a lot older than we look.
Yeah, we got started in a different form there with a show that was rooted in negotiation and conflict resolution, as a matter of fact, back in 2007. And the ratings were not good, and we couldn't get the phone to ring because we thought we would like to interact with callers, which we do enjoy from time to time. It's been a while, but we do enjoy it. And it's fun to talk about this since the subject came up, Garnet, there. But what we found was one day we decided to experiment because we just weren't getting the phone to ring and the numbers weren't that good, frankly. And so I said, why don't we bring in a numerologist to do some predictive work here, and then people can call up and talk to the numerologist and get a personal reading. And so we did that, and all of a sudden, the phone lines are blowing up. We couldn't handle the number of calls that came in. We took as many as we could. And that was a real lesson for Suzanne and myself, because people are endlessly, and I'm no exception, people are endlessly interested in themselves, in their fortunes, in their prospects in this life. And if there's any way you can attach it to something that gives you predictive value, like numerology, like astrology, or perhaps a tool of divination, there are, how many people do you figure? We got over 7 billion people on the planet now, and a good percentage of them will resort to this and have since ancient times, the Oracle at Delphi being a great example, because we want to know. We want that certainty in a world and a universe, for that matter, which appears to not have that to offer. Certainty is great in math, but when it comes to living your life day to day, it seems to me, and I wonder if it does to you, Garnet, that life seems to be constantly in flux, and therefore change is the only constant.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah. The point I was trying to make in terms of our progress is that, so you started your show in 2007. 10 years before that, you probably wouldn't have been able to have somebody like me on your show, because it wouldn't have been something that people would want to listen to. Hopefully, there are people who want to listen to your show now with me, although that's probably maybe 5 or 6 people. But in any event, things have changed. People are more spiritually aware, are searching for more answers, and in some ways, there's kind of splitting away from organized religion to some degree, because organized religion, of course, I was raised as a Roman Catholic. They have their dogmas, and they've been there they haven't really changed much. They've been there forever. It's like you have to follow the rules of the church. When you die, you're judged by God, and you either go to heaven or to hell, and that's it. I mean, that's the whole picture. Whereas now people are saying, well, okay. I mean, if anybody who reads my books know that there is no hell. There is no heaven. It's not in the religious sense, but there's a place you go back to from whence you came. So people are starting to believe in the cycle of reincarnation and starting to believe that what's important for us is to raise our vibrations through love and forgiveness and compassion. That's really where we want to go. But in most religions, they don't talk about that. It's sort of like, okay, these are our rules, you follow them, and you're either going to go to a good place or to a very bad place. And so there's still a lot of people who are religious. I mean, I have 3 sisters who still practice the Catholic faith. I haven't done that for a long time, but they still do it. And I don't know quite exactly whether they sign on to everything or not. But I know there's a lot of people who've read my books or who have watched my YouTube videos who say, I'm a recovering Catholic. It takes a long time to sort of get rid of all that dogma that was pounded into our heads when we were children, and then slowly coming around to realize that that's not the be all and the end all, and that there's another way of looking at things, at life, and why we're here, and the cycle of reincarnation.
I have likened the religions to football teams. When you live in a particular part of the country, whether it's the Pacific Northwest or the Southeast or the Midwest, you have a football team that is from your area. And so generally speaking, unless you're searching outside your immediate area, you're going to be a fan of that football team. You're going to be for the Seattle Seahawks if you live in the Pacific Northwest. You're going to be for the Miami Dolphins if you live in the Miami area. And so I think of religions as being community groups of people who are all for their team.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to change teams. They're not going to change how it is that they're looking at things, because I think religions are more cultural than spiritual. But I think the good thing about them is the creation of community and people caring about each other. If we're all wearing the colors of our team, if we're all singing the songs of our team and praising the players on our team, then we're of a like-minded community. And I think it's hard to break away from your team and think for yourself and say, does this actually make sense that I think this way? And I think so much of our preferences have really been handed down to us by our ancestors and by where it is that we're living. Otherwise, I would be practicing Hinduism or Zen Buddhism or something else if I lived in a different culture, a different part of the world. And so I still think that religions are pretty much man-made and are a whole different thing that is different from being spiritual. And you can be spiritual whether or not you've got a team. Does that make sense?
It certainly does, yeah. And actually, what you say about cheering for being part of your team or cheering for your team. When I was growing up, my parents, their whole social life revolved around the church. All their friends went to the same church. Most of their social activities were with the church, church picnics and church suppers and all that sort of thing. So it was really hard to sort of say, I'm not going to be part of this group anymore, this community. That was really part of their whole life. So that was very important to them. But, so they basically had to either accept all of the dogmas and rules of the church, or they could be chucked out and ostracized, and they wouldn't dare do that because they sort of like, my whole social life is gone. So they adhered to that. Well, one of the things that really bothered me as I left home and started questioning the dogmas of the church was that the philosophy that the Catholic Church said, you can't get to heaven unless you are a member in good standing of this church. So if you go to another church, it doesn't work. So I said to myself, well, what happens if some poor guy born in the middle of India, where there was no Catholic church within hundreds of miles, and he was raised with his religion, and he grows up to be a really good person, like a kind and hearted and spending time in the community, not committing any crimes. How is it fair that that guy should go to hell because he didn't belong to the Catholic Church? He had no access to it, and to me, it just made no sense at all. And so many of those things, just as I was sort of going through being a lawyer and being skeptical and trying to challenge everything, all the beliefs, that didn't make any sense to me. And in fact, it was worse than that. It was like when I was a kid, we could not even go into another church. Like if your best friend was getting married in the Presbyterian church, you couldn't go. That was a sin. And like, where does this come from? Like, how can you possibly think that's a sin by attending your friend's wedding in another church? I mean, I don't know if they still do that or not, and I don't really care because I don't follow their rules. But to me, some of the things just didn't make any sense. There's a lot of good things about religion. I mean, the 10 Commandments and don't kill people and don't steal and don't lie and do that sort of thing. That makes for a better society. Those rules are good. But these other rules, like you have to go to church every day on Sunday or you'll go to hell. Well, in one of my books, I give the example of a person who went to church every day of the week except Sunday. And under church rules, when he died, he wouldn't go to heaven because he missed the one day that he was supposed to go, so that going to church has nothing to do with being a good person for society and being somebody who's kind to other people, works hard, doesn't commit any crimes. That's just a church-made rule to say we need to have these people come into church every Sunday so we can lecture them, tell them what they need to do, and make sure they empty their pockets into the collection plate. I mean, that seems to me one of the main reasons, but that's just my view.
And along those lines, Garnet, thank you for that, by the way. I've had many, many occasions to think along similar lines too. Man, that's a whole hour unto itself. But I can tell you this, and of course, this proves nothing in terms of theology or philosophy. It's just an experience that I had, take it for what it's worth. But I had a sitting with a medium some years ago. And during this time we spent together, the medium was able to bring through my father, and that is hardly a rare occurrence. My father's around me all the time, I've come to discover. And anytime I consult with a medium, and I have with several, my dad's always there, God bless him. He's there for me, and it's an opportunity for us to communicate. At least in my experience, that's what's going on. And the subject came up about religion. And what my dad communicated with a kind of clarity there and an emphatic tone that was characteristic of my father when he was really intent on a subject. I could hear his voice. What he communicated through the medium was all this talk of this religion, that religion, people's preferences, people's faith traditions, all of this stuff. None of that means a damn thing over here. And over here is the other side of life, the spirit world. And my dad just made that clear. All of that stuff, that theology, it doesn't mean a damn thing over here. People's ideas, they are acculturated, they are inculcated, they are acquired. They don't come like spun gold from the lips of the Lord. They just don't.
Well, your dad was very wise. I mean, and you know, in my day, adults would not ever think, or be hard to find somebody who would think the way your dad did. So you were very fortunate to have him tell you like it is, really. And so he was obviously a very wise and old soul, probably because that was a very unusual thing, but very true, very true. When you get to the spirit side, religion means nothing. I mean, it's just you get over there and it's like you get to see the whole picture. And you know that religion just doesn't mean anything. It means a lot to people on earth, but it doesn't mean anything over there. And so your dad was obviously very wise.
And I was glad that he shared that with me, if in fact that's what was happening. I like to think it was. Let me ask you, and I do this in a humorous way. Did you say at some point when you and I were kids, we're pretty roughly the same age, we're boomers. Did you wonder how eating fish on Friday was a requirement on pain of being guilty of a sin, at least a venial sin, if not a mortal one, but a venial sin, failing to honor an obligation one Friday, and after Vatican II, the next Friday, it's not a sin. You can go out and have a steak. Who makes this stuff up? And did you have any residual guilt when you were no longer eating fish or being required to eat it on a Friday, every Friday?
Well, that was one of the things that really bothered me as a child, because on Fridays we would often go to a hockey game in our nearby town, and my friends who weren't Catholic, they could have hot dogs and hamburgers, and I couldn't have any. And so I was really quite, I mean, as a child, I was quite resentful. It didn't make any sense to me. And like you're right, all those people who ate meat on Friday before they changed the rule, theoretically they went to purgatory, and I thought, after they changed the rules, did they all get out of purgatory, or did they have to sit there and suffer through it? I mean, I don't know how these rules work, but they easily changed these rules about you know, eating meat on Friday. The other thing was you have to go to church on Sunday, and then they changed it to you can now go Saturday after 5 o'clock to count for Sunday. And in where I was raised, if you didn't go to church on Sunday without a valid excuse, that was a mortal sin. You go to hell. So I thought all those people who ended up going to hell, now they changed the rule. Do they stay in hell? Do they get out? I mean, it seemed to be totally unfair to have that happen. But of course, there's no explanation. They have rules and they change them, and I don't, the whole thing just doesn't make any sense to me. And in fact, once you realize that there is no hell, then it doesn't really matter, because all those people who ate meat on Friday or who didn't go to church on Sunday, they're in the spirit side. So they're probably looking down at us and laughing and saying, how did I ever believe that nonsense, But there's lots of people who do.
We are talking most enjoyably with Garnet Schulhauser. It's Metaphysical Q&A Friday on Mantz and Mitchell. If you have tuned in, whether from the beginning or just tuned in, we're sure glad to have you with us. Give us a couple of minutes. We'll take our one and only break of the hour, then more with Garnet, and who knows what pops up next. He also will indicate right after the break how you can get in touch with them. Thanks again for listening to us. We will be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Anson Williams from Happy Days, and I'm so excited to tell you about American Road. It is the best car travel magazine in the world. They have the most fantastic adventures detailed in each magazine with all your itinerary. We could just jump in the car with your family and have the most fabulous adventures you've ever had in your life. Please get a copy of American Road and start your own adventure.
Staying connected with Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell is easy. Just go to mantzandmitchell.com for the latest info on topics and guests. Friend Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell on their Facebook pages and like the Mantz and Mitchell show page at facebook.com/Mantz and Mitchell. If you're on Twitter, share a follow with Gary and Suzanne at Mantz Mitchell. Join Gary and Suzanne Friday and Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. for an unusual show that covers everything from personal growth to the paranormal.
Here's an amazing act. Here's a tremendous act. Here's a startling act. The amazing, the thrilling, the greatest, spectacular, incredible, exciting, wonderful, world fame, most unusual novelty act.
The home of the A-Team of Alternative Talk is mantsandmitchell.com. Heard right here on Alternative Talk 1150 AM or streaming live from your computer anywhere.
Terry Loving wants to help you with your online marketing challenges right now. She has several courses she is giving away to help you get your business working for you online. Yes, giving away. WordPress websites are her specialty, yet her technical skills go way beyond that. Check out her blog at terryloving.com or email her directly at terry@terryloving.com. That's terry@terryloving.com.
Imagine an animal sanctuary that only rescues the pets that are overlooked at shelters or abandoned by their owners. The Painted Rain Ranch saves the pets no one else wants. Regardless of the animal's age, health issues, or special needs, the Painted Rain Ranch is a refuge that provides a loving home to precious pets who so desperately want a family of their own. The animals stay on the ranch as part of the family until they take their last breath. With your support, the Painted Rain Ranch, a nonprofit 501c3 charity, will continue its mission to save these neglected pets and give them all the love and care they deserve. Donate today via their website, paintedrainranch.org. That's paintedrainranch.org, or their Amazon and Chewy wish lists. Thank you. On Friday, Mantz and Mitchell welcomed Garnet Schulhauser, retired Canadian attorney turned metaphysician, who reflects on his astral travels and lessons learned along the way.
On Saturday, Kelly Sullivan Walden, known as the Dream Doctor, talks about the symbolism in both our daytime and nighttime dreams, including animals and archetypes.
Bringing you mastery and mystery since 2007.
We are Mantz and Mitchell, Friday and Saturday mornings at 10 on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Get your daily dose of variety. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Mantz and Mitchell, and our guest for the 12th time, Garnet Schulhauser from Victoria. We always like talking metaphysics with Garnet Schulhauser. If people would like to be in touch with you, Garnet, what are the best places that they can find you up there north of the border?
Well, my website is a great source, which is garnetschulhauser.com. If you just Google my name, you'll get to it. There's information about all my books. I've written 5 books in the metaphysical spiritual genre. All my books are about my conversations and astral travels with my spirit guide, Albert. So if you're interested at all in where I came from in terms of after I finished practicing law, my books are a good source of it. I have links there to all my social media sites and to my YouTube channel where I've posted videos of, I've done some of my own videos, and all of my radio shows and podcasts are on there. So if you want to get sort of the full history, that's the best place. Anybody who has a comment or a question can contact me by email, which is garnetschulhauser.com. It's listed on my website, so I'd be happy to hear from anybody who has a comment or a question.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Garnet, I wanted to, and we played Steely Dan, Do It Again, which is a song about reincarnation. That's a subject that has fascinated Suzanne and myself, both separately and together. Turns out that that was something we had in common, the idea of reincarnation. I subscribe to it, can't prove it, but I believe that reincarnation is part of what I call, I didn't coin the term, but I'll use it, soul ecology, that we get recycled and we get to come back by our own choice or out of some sort of spiritual necessity involving our personal growth. And we come back into this world, take on another body for the purpose, it seems to me, of experiencing more from a different perspective each time, or alternatively, in order to keep working on a theme. Suzanne right now is reading a book, and she can say more about that, there where it is proposed that there are themes that we want to pursue. An outstanding example of which could be that people who are artists of various kinds, a musician, for example, I can't play a note there, but what if you're Mozart? There's got to be something to explain, aside from DNA, it seems to me, to explain the genius of Mozart, or in modern times, the genius of someone like Prince. There's got to be something going on there that takes more than one lifetime to accumulate the skill, the talent that you can bring through in another lifetime in order to continue pursuing musical greatness and create things that will last, create experiences, audio experiences for people that will stay with them. And so reincarnation seems real to me. I wonder what Albert has taught you about that and what your own viewpoint is about the possibility that we really do go from lifetime to lifetime in order to evolve.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. I mean, that was one of the first things that he told me when we first met, was he talked about reincarnation. It is absolutely true. It is absolutely real. Albert and I have had several previous lives together on Earth, where he was a human and I was. This time around, I came out here. He must have probably kicked me a bit and told me to get going. He stayed on the other side to be my spirit guide. But yeah, reincarnation is absolutely real. And your point about people reincarnating with a theme in mind. I mean, I think was it Beethoven who was writing music at the age of 5? I can't remember. One of those famous musicians. So at the age of 5, I was playing with toys. I mean, how does this guy start writing music when he's 5 years old? Well, he was a musician I don't know for sure, but I'm surmising he was a musician in a previous life, and some of that just carried through. He wanted to sort of keep on with his work, so he chose to incarnate in that situation where he could continue with his work. And there's probably a lot more examples. I mean, some of the famous inventors like Thomas Edison. I don't know for sure whether what he did in previous lives, but he probably was an inventor or in delving into the scientific realm in a previous life, and he just wanted to carry forward and continue that. So that's not the only reason for reincarnation. The primary reason, as you mentioned, Gary, is that we want to grow and evolve as souls. And for the most part, when you finish a life and you look back and you see whether your karmic balance is positive or negative, I mean, did you do more awful things or more good things? And the people who end up with a negative karmic balance, the souls, will often say, I can do better than that. I'm going to go back and try again in another life to see if I can't do some more positive karma and balance it out. Now, you're not compelled to do that. Nobody says that, God or the universe, or nobody says, yeah, you have to go back. Some people believe that there's a thing called a wheel of karma where you get trapped. And so if you incarnate on planet Earth and you've got negative karma, you have to keep on going, no choice, until you balance that negative karma out. That's not what Albert says. He says, no, you have an absolutely free choice. If you've piled up a huge amount of bad deeds, negative karma, you can just say, well, to heck with planet Earth, I'm going somewhere else, or I'm going to stay over here in the spirit side. But most souls will feel a moral imperative to say, well, I don't have to do this, but I feel like I should do this, to go back and try to balance out my negative karma, wipe the slate clean, and not only that, but to continue to grow and evolve. There are some souls, however, who don't need to balance any negative karma out, who come back to Earth to help other souls on their journeys. Okay, so their prime purpose is to help other people. They don't have anything to correct. They don't have any negative karma, but they're here to help other people. And that often happens. I mean, if you're sort of planning a life and you may enlist one of the others, an advanced soul on the other side to say, hey, Joe, can you, or Mary, can you come and incarnate into my life and help me out? Because I know I'm going to need some help. And so that happens quite often. So there's a number of different scenarios where people do come back. But yes, everyone, the cycle of reincarnation is actually very, very real. And there's a lot of religions who believe in that. Some Eastern religions believe that it's sort of like the wheel of karma. If you're a bad dude in this life, you're forced to come back as a snake in the next life. Excuse me. That's not the way it works. I mean, you're not trapped into doing anything. When you leave this life, Gary, if you want to come back as a snake, you can do that. I suspect that you probably wouldn't, but it's your choice, and there's a lot of people. The other thing that surprises so many people is it's not just humans. Animals have souls too. And in a lot of cases, as Albert says, that when a soul who has incarnated into other planets decides to try planet Earth, you have to be very brave to do that because Albert says that this school is one of the toughest in the universe. So if you want to try out planet Earth, it could be very daunting. So some people will say, well, I'm going to try out with a simple life. So like that of a rabbit, say. Now, a lot of people are horrified to say, God, I wouldn't want to ever be an animal. But that's a good way of getting your feet wet in planet Earth. Very simple life. Rabbits don't have to go to work. They don't have to save for retirement, put their kids through college. It's very simple. I have to find my next meal and avoid being eaten by an eagle. Okay, very simple. Human lives are much more complicated. So some souls will say, there's no way I'm going to jump into that. I'm not ready for it, So it's all over the map. And it's not only just on planet Earth that the cycle works everywhere. There's billions of planets that have life forms. Some are more advanced than us, some are less advanced. You can go anywhere you want to. And then before you even choose that, you can just travel on the astral plane to say, okay, let's look at this planet. What are the life forms here like? Do I want to jump into one of those, or no, I'll take a pass and I'll move on to the next one. So you can sort of explore the whole universe in astral form and decide where you want to go into a physical form. So it's really quite an amazing scheme. And the best part of it for me is that you're not forced to go anywhere. You can choose where you want to go, and that gives you that's a feeling of freedom, and to know that the choice is ours. We're not forced to go anywhere by anyone.
Has Albert ever given you some insight about soul groups? Are we reincarnating with some of the same people some of the time?
Absolutely. He says it's very common to travel through like the earth plane in soul groups. And so, they're just souls of, like mind that you've accumulated over time, and you travel in groups, and it's like a troupe of actors, theater actors traveling around the country. And they'll go into one play, and somebody will have one role, and then they'll go to another play, and you have a different role, and they sort of travel together. So your soul group, you interchange places with them. So one time you're the father, next time you're the aunt, next time you're the son, next time you're the grandpa, and you deliberately, change roles as you go through life, so you have the full experience of what it's like to be a human. And you change sexes, obviously. So you're not always a female, you're not always a male, and you really need to do that to get the full experience, human experience. But so the soul groups are handy because then, see, every time you incarnate, you say, okay, I'm going to be born to these parents. I'm going to have some siblings. I'm going to have aunts, uncles, grandparents. You have to get them to agree to be part of your life, and you agree to be part of their life. You can't just coerce somebody into saying you're going to be my father the next life. And this is all very cooperative, consensus way of approaching incarnations. And so your soul group is sort of like a handy group of people that you can sort of tap and say, okay, I'm going to choose this life. Do you want to be my brother? Kind of thing. And you always find somebody. There's never a lack of people who will go with you, because for their perspective, a lifetime on Earth is just a very short time. And so it's like, yeah, I don't really want to be your father in the next life, but what the heck, it's a short period of time, so I'll do it. And then you can return the favor, to me on another life. And so it's a very That's really how most incarnations work, as you travel in soul groups.
Is there anything to like when we're traveling in groups, the type of experiences that we're having? One of the people that I think I'm most angry at is Norman Rockwell, because Norman Rockwell portrayed such a lovely, sweet kind of life for all people, and it was never like Leave It to Beaver or Father Knows Best or any of those shows. And it seems like so many families struggle. They struggle with their relationships. And so I know that there are families that have holidays together, that get along, that do things for each other. And then there are a lot of families who argue, don't see eye to eye, have different perspectives and aren't afraid to vocalize that and end up splitting apart. So is that just part of an earthly experience, or when you're in your group, are you kind of agreeing that you're all going to get along or you're all not going to get along?
Well, I think it's just part of what happens in the human experience. But when you're choosing a family to incarnate into, you also know that the genetic makeup of that family, the human family, and so you sort of know. You can look at the history of the humans that the family you're going to incarnate to, and you can see whether they're likely to be into get into disagreements or to fight or whatever. But you know that beforehand, and so for some souls, they'll say, okay, well, I'm going into this family genetically over the ages. Those families have always had trouble. They've split apart. So I'm going in with my eyes open. Do I want to be part of this family or not? I mean, it's really like, do I want to have a tough life or a cushy life?
Yes.
And Albert says, a cushy life, you can choose a cushy life. You can choose to be born, as King Charles, or somebody who's very wealthy. But Albert says you're not going to learn very much, or not as much as you would if you're born into a family where there's likely to be more difficulty. So you can't predict exactly what's going to happen once you get incarnated, but you have a sort of a general idea as to what kind of family you're going to get into in a human sense. And so all the souls know that. And so you can resolve to say, I'm not going to get into a disagreement with my family members. But when you get born and you're incarnated, you don't remember what you vowed to do. You don't remember where you came from, and you don't remember that any agreements you made with your family, mother, father, siblings, whatever, that you made on the other side. You forget all that. That's by design. So you're sort of coming in, and you just have to deal with whatever you've been born into, and see how it goes. But you do have an indication before you incarnate as to what may happen or what likely may happen. I mean, you know that if you're born into a family that physically that has genetic defects, there's a good chance that you'll probably end up with that. But you do that with full knowledge before you incarnate, and maybe you wanted to experience that. I mean, people find it really, people have asked me, well, why would you want to be born as a blind beggar in Calcutta? Which seems very strange to us. Like, I certainly wouldn't want to. But on the other side, somebody may say, well, I've had a number of cushy lives. I'm going to try a very difficult life to see how I fare. How do I do? Do I still spread love and compassion to other people, or am I spend my whole life as being angry and bitter? So you sort of you choose the environment you want to get into, although you don't remember choosing that, and you don't really remember you don't know how you're going to act because you have free will. So that's why the Earth School is so tough, so interesting, actually.
It may be worth noting, Garnet, that in the last 18 years, Suzanne and I have met many mediums. We ought to stop and count them sometime, shouldn't we? Just a lot of friends that we've made and a lot of people who've been to our show and will be on the show in the future. And out of all those mediums with whom I've become acquainted, only one, the entire time, only one does not accept reincarnation. They're as part of the human condition, as part of human destiny and the soul ecology we've talked about. Everyone else, interestingly enough, everyone else says it's just how it works. It's not controversial for them. It's not a problem for them. that reincarnation, or so I'm told by these mediums, is something that you do in order to grow, in order to have different experiences, in order to create meaning for your soul. And once they do, it seems to me, once they accept it, let's call it an article of faith. Once you accept reincarnation as an article of faith, you don't spend time in philosophical dispute over whether or not it's real. You start to figure out how to use it. How will it advance your growth as an individual soul, as a spirit, to realize that there is, on the presumption that there is reincarnation, and then to make decisions accordingly. I just think it kind of gives you a breather. It takes a lot of pressure off when you say, okay, I will take this on faith and act accordingly, rather than taking it as a subject for philosophical discussion, like a topic in a conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Gary. And before I met Albert, I guess I was in the camp of, well, I didn't really know whether reincarnation was real or not. Certainly the Catholic Church doesn't believe in it. That's what I was taught when I was a child. Although interestingly enough, and I'm not a Christian historian or anything, but I understand that early days of Christianity, there was some people who advocated reincarnation as one of their tenets, and that was struck down. And according to Albert, he says, well, quite simply, the Catholic Church the Christian Church back in those days wanted you to have one chance, one kick at the can. You have one life. You better do it right in this life, because after that, you could end up in hell, or you might go to heaven. But it's very much, you have to do it right now. Whereas with reincarnation, if you tell people that they can come back again and again and again, then they could say in this life, well, I'm going to choose not to be good in this life, because I can keep on coming back. So it's really from my point of view, and what Albert says, is that it's a way for them to hold your feet to the fire. You got to do it right in this life. So in any event, I was sort of in the camp of, well, I don't know whether reincarnation is real or not. But when Albert came along, it was like quite apparent to me. He explained it all to me. He took me to visit people on the spirit side. I mean, I actually met with my deceased relatives there, and it's just sort of like it's a truth, just like the sun will get up in the east tomorrow. Reincarnation is just a fact of life. Not for everyone on Earth, but it certainly is over there, because you see the whole picture there, and you know where you came from, and you can look back at all your lives that you have. I mean, we don't get to remember our previous lives. That's by design. But when you're on the spirit side, you can look at all of your lives, whether you've had 5 or 500. So it's quite clear there. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And there's no doubt about it in my mind. I know exactly that's what's going to happen, which gives me a different perspective, because before I met Albert, I was like, okay, I'm not sure about this heaven and hell stuff, but if that's not true, what is there? I was in no man's land, and he clarified that. And now I can look at it and say, okay, I'll try to be a good person, try to embrace love and forgiveness. But if I screw up, I know it's not the end of it. I mean, I'll go back to the spirit side, and I can regroup and try again. And so that gives me a lot of comfort, and makes me able to sort of understand that when bad things happen to me, rather than get bitter or play the victim, I can say, okay, what's this supposed to teach me? What am I supposed to learn out of this? And that's really the attitude that everyone should have, because being a victim is just a total wrong way of looking at things, because the universe, God, doesn't do things to us. We do things to ourselves. Other humans do things to us, and that's just part of a life on Earth.
Did Albert ever discuss with you other lives that you've had?
Yes, he did. He did describe. I've described a few of them in my books. We've had a few lives together on Earth. In one case, he was I think it was in medieval England. He was a lord, a minor lord, and I was his manservant. And he ended up getting bucked off his horse. He was paralyzed, and so the rest of his life, I, as his manservant, had to look after him, basically. And look after him and take care of him, feed him, and all that sort of thing. So that was one of the lives. He said I've had many lives. He hasn't given me information about all of them, but I've had a few glimpses, and it's really quite interesting. And it's nice to be able to, when you get over there, to look back at your lives and look at it objectively, to say, okay, well, I kind of messed up here. I did some good things there, but overall, it's a learning experience, and and you can just see how you progressed or didn't progress from life to life. And supposedly we were supposed to get better as we go through every life. Doesn't always happen though, because of our free will and the fact that the free will allows us to enhance or enjoy our negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, greed, and those emotions cause most of the problems on earth. And so you can say beforehand, I'm going to be a real good person, but when you get here, circumstances may turn you into somebody who lets his negative emotions get out of control. And so you have to, there's no prediction. You can't, there's no way of assuring yourself when you're on the other side what you're going to do when you get here. That's why it's such a challenge.
Always a fascinating conversation with you, Garnet. Thank you for joining us today.
One more time, Garnet, your website.
GarnetSchulhauser.com.
And please spell your last name.
SCHULHAUSER.
Thank you so much, Garnet Schulhauser. Always a pleasure. We'll do this again, and it'll be the baker's dozen next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Have yourself a wonderful weekend, everyone. We always love it when you join us on AM 1150 KKNW Seattle.